Hello, everybody. We are on Dolphin Song by Lawrence and John, and we've reached chapter 15. It's quite tense at the moment, so let's see where we go. Over the next 2 days, Ben and Martine explored every inch of the island, except, of course, the beach, where the others were camped out, which they'd named Runway Beach because that was where they'd landed. Martine found it hard to get used to the mix of tropical and African scenery, although there was no denying it was beautiful. There were great gnarled marula trees alongside coconut palms and hibiscus flowers, and crinkled brick-colored cliffs towering over rocky beaches or snowy sands over which translucent crabs scampered. And surrounding it all was the sea with its fizzing shades of washed-out blue, like ink dropped on watercolor paper. At the top of the wind-rippled dunes, they found hundreds of heavy white shells, fossilized and catacombed with minuscule holes. Ben made up a funny story about them being carried there by a prehistoric bird as big as an ostrich. There were also black clay and glass beads, which they supposed had been left by the Arab and Portuguese traders, and on the beach itself there were pansy shells, white eggshell, delicate creations etched with the petals of a flower. Just around the peninsula near the end of the cliff were a stack of rocky shelves overlooking a picturesque bay. They were not deep enough to be proper caves, but they were secluded and provided welcome shelter in the heat of the day. The shelves proved a fine lookout point, but the 2 whole days passed without a single sign of humanity. They did see a couple of planes, but those were commercial aircraft, flying so high they were mere specks across the sun, and Martine's tin-lit signal would not have been visible to them. From the lighthouse, it was possible to see that their classmates had written a huge SOS on Runway Beach, using dark rocks that showed up against the sand in anticipation of the arrival of Claudius's father. They had also constructed a crude shelter from sticks and palm fronds, although every time the breeze wafted, it collapsed. Once they saw someone, it might have been Jake, kicking it in fury. At night time, the temperature hovered around 0 degrees Celsius, but in the afternoons it was scorching hot. If this is winter, I don't think I'd like to try Mozambique in summer, remarked Martine on the 3rd afternoon, fanning her face with a palm frond she had found. With a palm frond. She had found a clump of aloes near the lighthouse and was using the gel from the leaves to calm her sunburn. Yeah, aloes are amazing, actually. That's like aloe vera. Ben was fishing on the rocks near the sea's edge, using the line and hook from the survival kit and crab entrails for bait. He had caught 2 bream, which he put in a shaded rock pool where they could be easily retrieved later, and he was trying for another, but he was distracted. The water level had dropped with the departing tide, and the tip of a wreck had appeared on the edge of the reef. Ben was sure it was a Portuguese galleon. It reared above the crystalline waters. I've always wanted to look inside a real wreck, he said wistfully. Imagine the stories it could tell. Imagine the history it's seen. It might even have been a treasure ship. There could be caskets of pearls and gold. Better still, they might contain old journals or maps. It's very unlikely because lots of other people would have investigated before us, but you never know. We might find something that they missed. I can't wait to get home and tell my dad about it. Martine was fascinated by the wreck herself, but she shivered at the thought of tackling the currents again. Bathing on the edge of the lake or paddling in the clear island shallows, which were as non-threatening as Caracol Junior's swimming pool, was one thing, but never again would she put herself in a situation where there was even a remote chance she might be circled by sharks or fighting to breathe in deep, dark water. The ordeal of the storm was still too fresh in her mind. Her fear of the sea had become a virtual phobia. The wreck was on the edge of the open ocean. Who knew what lurked in the churning depths around it? "Will you come with me?" Ben asked eagerly. "I know it's a long way out, but we'll be fine if we're together." Martine flushed. She wanted so badly to say yes to her friend, because she knew how much it would mean to him, but it was impossible. "I'm sorry," she said. I just can't." Ben thought she was probably still traumatized by the storm, so he did his best to hide his disappointment. "That's okay," he said. "I understand." He went to cast his line again, and a movement in the water caught his eye. "Hey, look, the dolphins are back." Martine returned the fishing equipment to her pouch, and then she and Ben waded into the bay. At first, the dolphins seemed too busy to notice them. They darted about like quicksilver in pursuit of invisible shoals, so lithe and graceful that it was almost as if upon entering the water they too became liquid. On surfacing, they exhaled in soft puffs. Gradually, their inquisitive nature got the better of them, and they swam nearer and nearer. One was bolder than the rest. He separated himself from the pod and sidled up to Martine. There were 3 V-shaped grooves on his dorsal fin, and she recognized him as the dolphin who'd saved her on the night of the storm. He showed off a little, approaching her shyly, and then gliding away to turn a few artistic backflips and somersaults. When at last he settled for lying on his side close to Martine, she tickled his chin and the area around his blowhole and pectoral fins. He enjoyed that so much that he rolled belly up and allowed her to stroke his speckled tummy. His eyes were half shut in ecstasy. He lolled in the water as if it were as supportive as an armchair. Ben had seen plenty of dolphins on boat trips with his father, but until the night of the storm he'd never touched one. He too had been surprised by the satin-smooth texture of their skin. He also wanted to know how Martine had recognized a dolphin so easily. So she told him what she knew about dolphins' dorsal fins being as unique as giraffes' patches and human fingerprints. That jolted Ben's memory, and he recalled that the dolphin who'd carried him had cookie-cutter-shaped holes in her fins. Shortly afterwards, he spotted her. "We're not going to hurt you," Martine told the dolphins. "You saved us and brought us to this place. We only wanted to get to know you." The dolphins picked up on the gentleness in her voice and her savior dolphin's willingness to accept her touch, and their last shred of reserve melted away. They came crowding around with rough trills and whistles. Their dorsal fins were relatively easy to tell apart, so Ben and Martine decided to name them. Martine called her boisterous dolphin Sun Dancer because of the way the light glinted on his back as he leapt. Ben christened his dolphin Cookie, and another Honey, because she had a golden tint in her silver grey skin. Patch had white splotches on his back, the result of sunburn or battle scars from a shark attack. Minnie was small and elderly, a grandmother dolphin. Rain Queen appeared to be Sundancer's wife, and Little Storm their baby. And then there were Ash, Steel, and Thunder, 3 bright-eyed boys. They were also named after their colors, but it was their dorsal fins and cheeky faces which provided the real clues to their identity. Ben had collected a few strands of seagrass and was playing a game of tag with Cookie, so Martine floated in the translucent water, eyes half shut, and let the sunshine and the presence of the dolphins infuse her being. There were so many exquisite, ingenious, and lovable animals on the planet. Giraffes, for starters, but dolphins, she felt, were different. They were like the chocolate of the animal world. You couldn't get enough of them. Soon she sensed one of the dolphins approaching. She opened her eyes and saw that it was Little Storm. She stretched out her arms and opened her palms to show him there was nothing harmful in her hands, but the baby dolphin was wary. After each timid advance, he would swim away. He whistled at her a couple of times, and Martine tried whistling softly back. experimenting with a song her father had taught her, Amazing Grace. Little Storm mimicked her, and she could have sworn that he'd learned a couple of notes of it. Either way, it seemed to soothe him. He swam up to her and laid his face in her palms, and they floated in the buoyant water looking at one another. For Little Storm, it was a gesture of supreme trust. For Martine, it was unforgettable. Later, as she and Ben paddled to the shore, Martine said, "We should name this bay so it can be our special place even after we leave here." "Why don't we call it Dolphin Bay?" Ben suggested. So Dolphin Bay it was. That evening, Ben cleaned, gutted, and filleted the fish from the lake, and Martine picked a few banana leaves in which to wrap them while they cooked, as she'd often seen Tendai do. Unfortunately, the bananas themselves were not yet ripe. They built a new fire and warmed up while they waited for it to burn itself out and turn the wood into coals. Only then did they put the fish on. Laying her damp survival pouch near the fire to dry, Martine was reminded of her classmates who didn't have matches and faced a third long cold night, probably without dinner. That made her feel guilty, even though there was no real reason she should, since it was she who had attempted to keep everyone together. Earlier that day, while she and Ben were laughing and fooling around with the dolphins, Martine had spotted a couple of figures watching them from the palm trees. When next she turned her head, they'd gone. She told herself that they could be having fun as well if they'd chosen to, but it was hard not to feel bad. "I feel guilty too," said Ben, guessing her thoughts, "but I'm trying not to." Their supply of firewood was running low, so they left the fish to cook while they went out to find more. They gathered anything combustible they could find and put it into a single pile. For the first time since leaving Salbona, Martine felt something close to happiness, or at least as happy as it's possible to be when she didn't know when or if she'd see Jemmy again. Jemmy's her giraffe back at Salbona, the game reserve. Her mum and dad would have been proud of how she was adapting, managing, surviving. She hadn't given a thought to being rescued for hours. Being on the island and around dolphins had certainly made her feel differently about things. She was forced to exist in the moment, to take each day as it came. Hopefully some of it would rub off so that when she did eventually get back into Salbona, she and her grandmother would work everything out. They would hug and make up. It would all be okay. When she and Ben had collected enough kindling, they climbed back up to the lighthouse under the blazing white light of a full moon. Far below them, the ocean spilled out like a wizard's cloak, dark blue and speckled with sparkles. The smell of barbecuing fish wafted through the air. "I wonder what the others are doing," Martine said, her words muffled by the armful of timber she was carrying. "I bet you anything they haven't managed to catch any fish. I wonder what they're planning to eat tonight." Ahead of her, Ben stopped so suddenly that she ran into him. He put down his wood. "I think we're about to find out," he said. Jake and Nathan were sitting in front of the fire in the lighthouse. White flecks of fish dotted around their mouths. Sharon's cheeks were so stuffed that she resembled an especially greedy hamster. Lucy and Claudius were reclining on the low bamboo beds. They looked as though they were waiting to be fed grapes. Jake was the first to spot their gassed faces at the door. "Hi, guys," he said. "Thanks for the great dinner. We really appreciate it. Who knew you could cook like that?" Sharon spluttered something unintelligible. "Even I have to admit that it was pretty good," Claudius added more currently. "Full marks." "And this is even better." He reached under the bed and pulled out the survival kit. "Leave that alone," cried Martine. She went to fly at him, but Ben's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, and he held her there, struggling. "Ooh, temper, temper," mocked Claudius, and the others laughed. He unzipped the pouch and began pulling out its contents. "I've been having a rummage through this, and it's unbelievably useful. Were you a brownie in a past life, Martine? Look at this. A knife, matches, fishing line. Everything anyone could need on a desert island. It's almost as if you knew you'd be ending up on one." "Give it back to me," demanded Martine. "Please." Claudius gave a dramatic sigh as if the decision were out of his hands. "Sorry, Martine. No can do. This stuff is very handy." Nathan seemed embarrassed, but he didn't say anything. Yeah, said Jake. You didn't share with us, so why should we share with you? Martine was outraged at the injustice of this accusation. She and Ben had worked like Trojans to create a warm shelter and catch fish for their dinner, and now the others were going to reap the benefits of their labors. It was so unfair. She looked to Ben for support, but none was forthcoming. If anything, he seemed ever so slightly amused. You were the ones who didn't want anything to do with us, she reminded Jake. We did want to share stuff with you, but you told us to stay away. Yes, agreed Claudius, but you didn't mention that you happened to be carrying a Girl Guide pouch. If you had, we might not have been so hasty. Martine was fuming. She lunged at him in a last-ditch attempt to snatch her survival kit. But Ben was too fast for her, and he pulled her out of the lighthouse and along the path. Let go of me, said Martine, panting. She wriggled out of his grasp and stood glaring at him. Why didn't you do something? How could you just let them get away with taking everything from us? Our food, our shelter, our survival equipment. What are we meant to do now? Why do you have to be so nice all the time? You're 10 times faster and fitter than Claudius. You didn't have to give him your life jacket on the ship. You could have saved my survival kit if you tried. But no, you did nothing. What's worse, you wouldn't let me do anything. Don't you know that sometimes you have to fight for what's right? Without a word, Ben began to walk away. That's right. Just run away, Martine said scornfully. You can't even stand up to a girl. It's true what everyone says about you. You're a wimp. You're pathetic. Ben froze in his tracks. He turned around slowly, and the lighthouse beam fell on his face. Martine saw the terrible hurt in his eyes. What did you want me to do? He asked quietly. Did you want me to hit him? Did you want me to attack Jake or Nathan or even Lucy? Why? Because they were hungry and ate a bit of fish, because they saw an opportunity for some easy shelter and took it. The sea is full of fish, and the island has plenty of shelter. When did fighting ever solve anything? Martine didn't answer. She felt as if she was standing outside her body looking down on herself. She knew she was behaving badly, but she was powerless to do anything about it. I do fight, Ben continued in his soft, steady voice. I fight every day to be allowed to be who I am. I just don't do it with my fists or with the words the way the other kids do. Then he strode away down the dunes and was swallowed by the night. Oh, that was a hard chapter. Martine, she's so alone now because she's got upset with the others. And she took it out on Ben, and now Ben, he's left her. And the others aren't friends with her. She's pretty alone now, Martine. What's going to happen in chapter 16? We'll see next time we read.